What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel and to another Overwatch World Cup roster reveal reaction video. And in today's video, I'm going to be reacting to South Korea's final 7-man roster. So let's take a look at who made the final 7 for them. So on main tank, they have Mono. Off tank will be Choyobin. Then on DPS, there's Carpe, Architect, and Haxel. And lastly, on main support there's IDK, and the flex support this year will be Badoshin. It's kind of funny though. Unlike with any other countries, South Korea is that one team where I can't complain with any of their player selections. Can I be upset that a certain player got in over another one I wanted to see? Yeah, of course I can, but at the end of the day, I can't complain and just flat out say, hey, South Korea made the wrong selection. They definitely should have picked this guy over the one on their roster right now. That's something I just can't do unless they made a ridiculously dumb selection like putting Swan on main tank or something, you know? Kind of like with any other year in the past, South Korea is as always looking really stacked. So why not just break down all of their player selections, starting off with main tank, which would be Mono, of course. So Mono, in my opinion, is arguably the #1 main tank in the entire world. The dude is an absolute beast, and he's been on Team South Korea before back in 2017. This is nothing new for him. He's an experienced veteran at this point, and I love his hero pool too. He can play Winston, Reinhardt, and Orisa at a fairly high level. Another great thing about Mono is that he is one of the most consistent main tanks I've ever seen in my entire life, and I feel that he's just really dependable overall, regardless of who his teammates are. He knows when to be aggressive, he knows when to be passive. He's a very intelligent player, and according to Krusty, who is the head coach of the San Francisco Shock and the coach of Team South Korea this year, that's a big reason why he selected Mono. He feels that he's just more dependable than somebody like Bumper, who likes to be really aggressive and go in by himself sometimes. He likes that Mono isn't a super demanding main tank. He doesn't need as much help as somebody else would, for an example, and he's just said that he works better overall with a lot of the other players who tried out. I'm assuming this is a big reason why Mono was the only main tank to make it into the top 12 of the South Korean roster. Okay, so moving on to off tank, we have Choyobin, and again, I can't really complain with this selection at all, since Choi has arguably been a top 3 off tank in the Overwatch League all year long. He's been super consistent on that diva, and he's been showing off a really good Roadhog as of late too. Because the San Francisco Shock have so many star players, sometimes Choyobin flies under the radar. In fact, I think Choyobin has been so good this year that he deserved to be in the MVP running. It's a shame that he didn't make it into the top 5. I have a lot of praise for Choyobin. I think he's a really solid player, and I'm really happy to see him representing Team South Korea this year. I know he's going to do great, and he should feel proud of himself. He outplayed Janu. Janu is an insanely good player, and he himself actually made the top 5 for the MVP race. Moving on to DPS, first up is Carpe, and I'm sure some people may be a little upset to see him on here, or surprised just because of the fact that he represented South Korea last year in the World Cup, but I'm not angry or surprised by this at all. My reasoning behind this is really simple. Last year, Carpe basically was stuck in Zarya jail the entire time just because Goats was so powerful and DPS was kind of useless, so he didn't get to play it that much. But this year, he can fully just show off his skills on his hit scan heroes that he's really good at, and he can have more fun because, again, I think most DPS players would agree that playing DPS is a lot more fun than playing Zarya or Brig the entire time. Although I'm not mad about the Carpe selection, I'm a little disappointed that Decay didn't make it in over him just because he's such an exciting young prospect that everyone believes has a lot of potential, and some people say that he could be the best DPS player in the world one day, so it's sad to not see that kind of skill set get shown off. No disrespect to Carpe at all, he's one of my favorite players in the entire world, but I'd prefer to see new faces over ones I've seen in the past. But again, I'm not mad. I love me some Carpe Widow. Now let's talk about Architect. This is a bit more of an interesting selection, but I can kind of understand why he'd make the team over other people who may be more deserving just because Krusty is his head coach. Since Krusty coaches the Shock, I'm sure he wanted to get as many Shock players as he possibly could on Team South Korea. But I think it goes beyond the Shock bias with Krusty just because I remember reading in a Twitter thread that he finds Architect to be really easy to coach and that he just fits in with his coaching style overall really well. And it's not like Architect is a bad player. Sure, the selection may be a little bit surprising for some people, but at the end of the day, Architect is a god, regardless of how much he's played this year. He probably has one of the deepest hero pools in the entire world. I mean, he can play projectile and hit scan at an absurdly high level. I've seen this dude dominate on Widowmaker, Genji, Junkrat, Pharah, you name it, he can play it. Mark my words, if Architect starts for Team South Korea this year, he is going to dominate. He will put on a show for every single one of us, I guarantee you that. And finally, we round out their DPS with Haxel, and I'm really excited about this selection in particular just because he is the first runaway player to actually represent Team South Korea, I believe. So that's really cool, but also, as a bonus, Haxel's arguably the #1 Genji in the entire world. He's just a world-class projectile player in general, and he's shown the ability to flex onto other heroes like Mei, for an example. Fun fact about why Krusty ended up selecting Haxel is that he believes Haxel will be a really good shot caller and leader on this team, especially when it comes to any sort of dive comp they use. Here's an actual quote from Krusty himself talking about why he likes Haxel so much, and again, this has to do with the Twitter thread I mentioned earlier. I'll make sure to leave a link to it in the description if you want to check it out for yourself, since it's a really good read. But anyway, here's what Krusty said about Haxel. If this meta goes to dive meta, we need someone who's loud and takes initiative, and I thought Haxel could do that. He could take the lead. So yeah, as you can see from this quote, Krusty believes that Haxel will be a really good leader in any sort of dive meta for Team South Korea. Regardless of why Haxel made the team, I'm really glad to see him on here. I know he's going to do great, just like with Carpe and Architect. And again, if you want to learn more about the Team South Korea roster selection process, make sure to check out the link in the description. There's a good chance it's going to answer some of the questions you have. It goes over everything from why Bumper didn't make the team over somebody like Mono, to why no Shanghai Dragons ended up making the team. And it also discusses some of the players who decided to either drop out or not bother trying out to begin with. Moving on to the main support position, I'm really pleased to see IDK make the final cut, just because he's been one of the bright spots on the Hangzhou Spark this year. I think everybody on that team in general has been really good, but IDK has been one of the best players without a doubt for me. He's been very dominant on that Lucio for sure. I have to give credit where it's due to IDK. He got in over Animo. That is very impressive. Animo has consistently been a top tier main support in the Overwatch League, so that just shows how good IDK really is. But another reason that IDK made it in over Animo has to do with the synergy with Badoshin. According to Krusty, IDK has a very active playstyle, which can work well with Badoshin's playstyle. Animo, on the other hand, seemed to mesh together well with Kariv, but either one of those two underperformed, or Badoshin and IDK basically just killed it and did really amazing in tryouts. Speaking of Badoshin, it's a little bit interesting to see him make Team South Korea. Yes, I know I just said that part of the reason he made it is because he synergizes so well with IDK, but why is it that he did so well in the South Korea tryouts? No offense to Badoshin, I believe that he is a world-class level flex support player, but overall this year for the London Spitfire, he's had a lot of quiet games. He's had his pop-off moments here and there, but for the most part, he hasn't been that same player from last year that we commonly saw as the second best flex support in the Overwatch League. We just don't get those same types of vibes anymore from him, I feel. This is definitely an interesting selection, but I can't really say that it's a bad thing for Team South Korea to have Badoshin, and I'm sure he did really good in tryouts and all, and that he synergizes really well with all of his other teammates. I'm not going to sit here and complain or anything, but I'm a little sad that Kariv didn't end up making the final cut over Badoshin just because he's one of my favorite players playing for my favorite team, and I would have loved to watch him represent South Korea in the World Cup. That would have been amazing. But overall, I'm pretty pleased with Team South Korea's roster. I personally find all of their players to be really likable, but also there's a bunch of diversity on this roster. There's only 2 people, as I said before, who have competed in a World Cup in the past, but also every single player is basically from a different team with the exception of Architect and Choyobin. In the past, we've seen multiple players from the same team make Team South Korea, but this year is a whole lot different. We have representation from the NYXL, San Francisco Shock, Philadelphia Fusion, Vancouver Titans, Hangzhou Spark, and London Spitfire. It's going to be a lot of fun to see how well stars from different teams work with each other. My concluding statement on Team South Korea this year is that they're looking absolutely stacked and that they will most likely be the favorites to win the World Cup yet again. And with that being said, that is going to wrap up yet another Overwatch World Cup roster reaction video. If you did enjoy this content, then I would appreciate it if you could like and subscribe. And if you want to see more content just like this, then make sure to let me know down in the comment section. As always, thank you all so much for watching today's video. I really do appreciate it. And until next time, this is ATP, signing out. Peace.